And now for the main event, Susan Davis is going to introduce Michelle.
Thank you. Is this a great time to be a Democrat or what? Honestly. I mean, we've got Kamala Harris running for president, Jennifer McCormick running for governor. We've got Valerie McRae running for the U.S. Senate and Tim Peck running for the U.S. House. What a slate of candidates to get behind. And they all need your financial support. They all need your help in any way that you are comfortable with. Please contact those campaigns. But our candidates for the state House of Representatives, for our state legislature, do they ever have a challenge? Our districts, our voting districts are so badly gerrymandered. Well, the coach would call them weird, and they are. And you have to wonder why. I mean, you think about it, we've got Thomas Horrocks, who has a little piece of Monroe County, a little piece of Jackson County, parts of Brown County. We've got Michelle Higgs with pieces of Johnson County, a little piece of Monroe County, mostly Morgan County. We've got Curtis Cummings with pieces of Vigo and Clay and Monroe and Owens. Oh my, how do they even find the voter? How do the voters even find them? And why is it so strange? Well, we now know. After the Obama election in 2008, and everybody got so excited, and the Republicans looked at what the Democratic leader could do in the country to excite participation, a few of them got together and decided to spend $30 million to go after key states and get their legislature elected. They knew the census was coming in 2010. So what had always happened before, when the Democrats were in power in Indiana, they'd play a little bit. And then when the Republicans were in power, they'd play a little bit. But each party kind of kept everything in check because they knew their turn was coming. Okay? The red map, all capital letters, took care of that. And Indiana has been under a Republican trifecta for 2 censuses now. So these candidates have a real challenge to get these seats. As Michael Leppert put in the Indiana Chronicle in April, Indiana is not 80% Republican. It's not, but our Senate is. Indiana is not even 70% Republican, but our House of Representatives is. Even the congressional districts have been gerrymandered to the point where 7 out of 9, 77%, are designed to keep those Republicans in power. So what do we do about that? Well, Michelle Higgs is here to talk about a really innovative, creative workaround. And I'm proud she's from my district, House District 60, and she's wicked smart, and she will be a wonderful challenge to Peggy Mayfield. Michelle.
Thanks so much, Susan. Again, my name is Michelle Higgs, and I am representing House District 60, which is 2 precincts of Monroe County, the northern part, 33 precincts of Morgan County, not including Mooresville, and 13 precincts of Johnson County, just north of Barkersville and just west of Greenwood proper. A little bit about me. First, I moved to Indiana when I was 14. My family moved to Martinsville. My dad managed a gas station on Main Street, Swifty Gas Station, and my mom delivered meals with Socoa throughout Morgan County in rural spaces. And And after I graduated high school, I went to performing arts school up in Canada. I eventually met my husband Simon, who's British, if you hear him talk. We moved to England, lived there for a couple of years. I got to experience universal health care, thank you. He then got accepted to music school in Los Angeles. So we moved, I lived on Hollywood Boulevard, just off of Hollywood Boulevard for a couple of years. And then we lived in the San Fernando Valley, just north of Burbank, California for about 20 some odd years. So in 2016, we moved back because my parents were getting older, but also we have 3 children. We have a 29-year-old daughter, but then we were blessed with a 12-year-old son and a 9-year-old son. And someday I will talk to God about timing. But it was at that moment where I'm like, I kind of need my family to help me, and they need me to help them. So that's what brought me back to Indiana. And what I discovered was a lot had changed. So Susan's talking about how we've been under this Republican trifecta for quite some time. And I think what I noticed, first off, was when I would live in Los Angeles, I would regularly come back to Indiana, and I would call it my reality check. Indiana was the place where I felt like people were, I don't know, there was a quality of life that I appreciated, and it wasn't fabricated. Los Angeles tended to have that superficiality. However, coming back, I also got involved doing some organizing. And so we happened to be door knocking up in Martinsville, Indiana, and come to find out that they were having cancer clusters. And more importantly, they were having rare cancer clusters. And when they figured out that it was to do with some toxic water plumes that had happened because of dry cleaners in the 80s had been illegally dumping, the community was asking for help to declare it a Superfund site so they could get cleanup. And they were not getting heard at the state level. And in organizing, I would go up with them for that. I would go up with them for pregnant worker accommodations. I would go up with them about health care. We would take people to the State House and nothing made a difference. It didn't matter how many people we took up there because they had the supermajority. They could make decisions behind closed doors. They didn't need a single Democrat vote. So there was no sense of having any kind of bipartisan communication, but mostly it didn't even matter what their constituents said. And so fast forward to earlier this year. And by this point now, I'm also joining up with the Davises and Reverse Citizens United. And we are sitting around the table and we're commiserating the fact that once again, Peggy Mayfield's going to be on our ballot. And it didn't look like there was anybody running in opposition. And my husband's like, I keep trying to tell Michelle she should run against Peggy. She's testified against her. She should run against her. And I'm like, no. And even Susan was like, well, that's a nice idea, but I don't know. And even Tommy Allison was like, that takes an awful lot of work. I don't know. But Doug is like, I think she can do this. I'm going to find out if she can still do this. And so next thing you know, I go up to the State House and I'm filing to run. And I'm sitting here going, what did I just do? And the whole time I'm waiting for people to go, that was so nice of you to do, Michelle, but don't. And instead, time after time after time, I had people come up and going, thank you for running. Thank you. We need somebody there. And then I realized that there was no help coming as a candidate. And that is really, really daunting, especially when you are running in a county that is not only, it is powerfully protected. The president of the Senate, Roderick Bragg, is from Martinsville, Indiana. Daniel Elliott, the treasurer of Indiana, is from Martinsville, Indiana. And Peggy Mayfield, my opponent on the House Ways and Means, is from Martinsville, Indiana. So when I tell you that Morgan County is very powerful in a very quiet, behind the scenes way, I mean that. And so my battle wasn't just running. It was like, this is protected territory that they have been able to shield from any type of voter accountability for a very, very long time. And then when I realized again that there was still no help coming, I remember talking to Thomas Horrocks. And Thomas recommended this book called Dirt Road Organizing. I'm like, that sounds really good. I think I'm going to get that. And it was the story of a young woman named Chloe Maxman who went to Maine, went to the most rural part of Maine, and decided, I'm just going to go door knock. I'm going to run for office and see what happens. And she won her seat, her House seat, and then she turned around and the next 2 years she ran for Senate, and she won that because she actually talked to people. She knocked on doors. She wasn't afraid to have those conversations. And the other thing that I appreciated about the book was it named all of the frustrations I had with the Democrat Party, in the sense that if you aren't in that, if you aren't in one of those states that everybody invests in, if you are just that flyover state or that drive-through district, you become invisible. And the problem with that is voters know this. They know that they are invisible. And so guess what? They don't show up. We can tell people till we're blue in the face that Jennifer McCormick is the better choice for governor, that she is amazing. But if nobody's ever cared one whit about them, they're not going to show up for Jennifer. And so I remember lying in bed and I remember thinking, I've got to get Jennifer elected. I've got to get Destiny Wells elected, and I don't quite know how to do that because it's going to require all of these spaces to show up. And then we had a Reverse Citizens United meeting, and Tommy Allison's talking about how gerrymandering has purposefully created artificially rural communities. And these are spaces where they have intentionally carved out communities of interest, which means IU gets carved out or Columbus gets carved out because of Cummings. Anywhere where there is an employer, a school, a cultural center of interest, anything like that, it gets carved up. So what we are left with is people that have been removed out of where they go and do business, where they work, where they play, where they go to school. And when we ask them, hey, do you know who represents you? They haven't got a clue. We've got layers of townships upon House districts, upon congressional districts. I had one woman talk to me, she's over by Waverly, and she said, my child goes to school in Mooresville. I work in Marion County. I do my shopping in Johnson County, Greenwood area, but I pay utility bills down in Bargersville, and yet all of my government work is done in Morgan County and Martinsville. I don't know where I belong. I can say that truthfully as somebody who lives up by Lake Lemon, because for me, if I wanted, and we actually did this, we sponsored a Little League team. But the Little League team that all of my kids' friends play with, that's in Thomas's district, across the street from my district. The Little League team that's in my district is in Martinsville. Those kids go to the Martinsville School District. My kids don't know any of them. So when I say that when you try to genuinely run for office in these gerrymandered districts, it can feel horribly politician-y, I guess. I don't know if that's a word, but it's like I'm sponsoring a Little League that I'm not actually rooted in, because it makes sense to do that, but it also doesn't always feel authentic. And that's what troubles me with all of this. So we're at another Reverse Citizens United meeting, And Susan is reading a letter from Curtis Cummings. Curtis Cummings is running for office. He's in Vigo, Clay, Owen County. Y'all, I am learning my geography. His letter is, hey, did you know that they're trying to do carbon sequestration, which basically burying carbon dioxide under the ground in these pipes, that if they burst, you have all of this come up and it will actually stall vehicles who are trying to come to rescue people. And they're saying that they're going to put it 5 feet under the ground and they're going to eminent domain farms and houses and all this stuff to do this because there was some corporations that have decided, hey, Indiana is a really good place to invest in so we can extract stuff. And he's reading this letter and I actually had tears in my eyes because I knew the people that were being impacted by this. I knew that they had been protesting for a long, long time. And then I remembered, oh, wait a second. In Johnson County, right next to me, there's a gentleman named Michael Potter, and he is running for House District, but he's also an environmental engineer. Wouldn't it be really cool to connect Michael with Curtis? And then I thought, actually, Monroe County has an amazing Democratic base. Johnson County has an amazingly strong, growing Democratic base. They just opened up their Dem headquarters after 40 years. Morgan County has an emerging Democratic base, small but mighty, but we don't have a headquarters. I need to connect all of them. My mind was like, this is like an Oreo cookie. So here I'm looking at Michael and Curtis. I'm looking at Joco Dems, Monroe County Dems, Morgan County Dems, David Henry. I'm like, I got to connect David to Amanda to, all these people. And I think I forgot the most important thing. When I moved here, I started organizing. So I have 7 years of organizing experience. So that's what I decided to do. How do we organize this? So I reached back out to Thomas. I said, Thomas, what do you think of this idea? Curtis, what do you think of this? Michael, what do you think? And they're like, yeah. Well, then they kind of talked to their people. And next, Trish Whitcomb came in. And Trish is like, well, what about Jennifer David? And Jennifer's like, what about Sarah Blessing? And on and on and on. And we just actually started to look at where the map was. And two things emerged. One, we have some amazing candidates, y'all. Amazing candidates that are high energy. They want to do the work, but they also don't want to be alone doing the work. And the second thing is, we still have 26 House districts that are running unopposed, of which Lawrence County is one of those. So it's smack dab in the middle. It's really frustrating when you look at a map and you go, we should have that. We should have that. As I started to pull everybody together, and Ryan came in, and Ryan's like, oh, actually, and it was Thomas like, I need you to meet Ryan, and I need you to meet Kent Yeager. So we get on a Zoom call, and they get excited, and I'm like, oh, thank God, Ryan, you're here. I'm going to hand this to you. And Kent Yeager, I don't know how many of you know Kent Yeager, but he works at the state level for rural engagement. And to see someone that has been in the politics of this for a long, long time get excited and go, I want to go back to the state and tell them this is what's happening. And the more that we would talk, the more I kind of solidified my theory of change for Indiana. I call it, we need to bet on the House. House district candidates run every 2 years. Yeah. House district candidates are the last level of like an elected official before you get into distributed government, municipality government, that kind of thing. Cheryl, correct me if I'm wrong on that. So they are amazingly accountable. And they are amazingly connected to people up and down ballot. They also run every 2 years. So if you want to stay in this cycle of building power, and that's what I'm going to call this, building power, we need our House candidates and we need our House electeds to work together. And if we do that across the whole state, And those House candidates are tied into their county Democrat parties, whether they are well-established or emerging, or in many cases, non-existent, they will know what people power is there. And they can get that word back and say, hey, you know what? We need to mobilize some more things here. We need to invest in the people in this community. It's also amazing to get the information of what's happening on the ground. There's some districts that they have some support, and then there's others that not only do they not have a base, but they don't even have the community mechanisms where you would generally meet people, because after COVID, so many groups disbanded. So we are building up. And sometimes I wish I could see a map of Indiana and go, is this a really cold area that we need to start to plant some seeds or till the soil? Or is this an area, like in farmer terms, where they actually are ready for a harvest? Because that's going to tell us how much we need to invest more people power in. When we started talking about doing the Rural Summit, the image that I had in my head was like a summer band tour. Okay. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool if we had enough candidates and groups of us could go from place to place, and we could have these things. It could be a town hall, it could be a kind of concert social time, but whatever it was, we would have candidates there speaking through values and vision, what we wanted for Indiana to invite people in, and anchor people to both, again, up and down ballot candidates in that district. And the thought was, if the candidates are like the band, then you kind of need the groupies. And the groupies really are y'all. The groupies are the base that are committed to the cause of long-term change in Indiana. And so I'm super excited to say that we now have 12 candidates connecting 30 counties, which is covering 34% of Indiana Southern. We are also talking with northern candidates that are excited to work with us next election cycle. So we will have this going around the whole state. And the other really cool thing is when we had our summit in Scott County, a gentleman came over and said he had run 3 consecutive times for office and he was burned out, not interested. He had driven 3 hours to see what we were doing, and he said, if there is a rural summit next year, I will run again. This is the power of connectivity for candidates and for bases in rural communities. And I cannot stress that enough. What else do I want to leave you with? Okay. This is what I would call Hell Week. Because we have about 4 events coming up. On your table is a flyer for the Martinsville one, because that's the flyer that I had, but I'm going to tell you the dates of the other ones, just to give you an idea. So we have tonight, there's a group of us coming out, from Bloomington. So if anybody wants to carpool with us, we are going down to Harrison County to support Sarah Blessing. She's in District 70. Harrison County is opening their very first Democrat headquarters. Also, they have a person who is going to be speaking. His name is Sean Boston. I don't know how many of you have heard about what's been happening down south with this guy named Jamie Nolan. Is it Nolan? No, Jamie Nolan. Sean Bostic is the person who basically blew the lid on that, investigative journalist. And so they're going to be talking about transparency and accountability in government, and what does it look like to have ethics and that type of thing. And so it looks to be a really exciting evening, because the people down there have been so horribly impacted by this corruption. Then, as Thomas said, Friday, so this is for you guys, Friday, at 5:30 p.m. And this is at Buddy Bill's Bait Park, and that's on Moffett Lane. And that is really covering our Brown, Monroe, Owen counties. And so what I tell people is bring neighbors, bring friends, bring them curious people. It's like if they go, what the heck are Democrats really, really wanting? Bring them. We are inviting them into something. And then the next one is Tuesday on the 24th. That's at 5:30 up in Martinsville. That's the Morgan County, Johnson County Summit. So just like Thomas had said, we've got, let me see here. We've got Carrie Newcomer here. And then there's a young lady that's going to be singing in Martinsville. Her name's Rose O'Neill. She is a local singer-songwriter. She's about 24 years old. When she was 18, I think she performed for American Idol. She won a golden ticket. She's got a lot of young people that follow her. So that's why I'm hoping that we're going to see some young voters come. Then Thursday, the 26th, we're going to be in St. Paul for the Decatur, Shelby counties. And then October 1st, we're in Du Bois County. And so you can see kind of our outreach and our spread. We show up at parades. We've got a social media. I invite you all to follow the Indiana Rural Summit on social media. And the other thing, I'm trying to think. So you're looking at me, Lane, like I'm.
Oh, as of last Wednesday, we have over 1,000 followers
Yes.
on the page.
Yes.
We get a lot of coverage.
Yeah. So yeah.
I posted about this, so.
Yeah, we're using social media quite a bit. It's connecting really to other groups. So for example, at the Martinsville Summit, we're going to have groups. Reverse Citizens United is going to be tabling. We have Mad Voters. Sierra Club's going to be there. The Indiana Coalition of Public Education. So what the idea is to really try to connect people with the information that these groups are holding. Like they are experts in a lot of the work that they're doing. And so we want to tie them to that. Anyway, I would love to just answer some questions if anybody has. I know I gave you probably a huge amount of information. But I really want to just stress the purpose of this is to engage voters who people think have often left them invisible. And when people again are invisible, the systems in place can exploit them more easily. We see that quite a bit in our rural spaces. There's a lot of things coming down, particularly around education, that are threatening our small rural school districts. And I don't know if you know, I'm sure everybody knows this. It's like you get rid of that rural school, there is nothing else. That's your Friday night lights. That's your band. That's your, social gatherings. So it's super important that these people know that we care about the issues that are directly impacting them and that we're going to go and fight for them. And we cannot do that by just being a single candidate running every 2 years. That's unsustainable. So. Susan, Reverse Citizens United, is that statewide?
No. I mean, there are groups, but this is a local group started by Alice. We just make this road.
I would definitely recommend getting on their mailing list, though. What they do is they just track the legislators and like what's funding them. And in particular to see like they just made this really bad decision, why? And then they can go, oh, because way back here, such and such gave them, $2,000. Can I just also say our legislator, God, they're cheap dates. They really are. The decisions that they make for as little as they actually pull from these organizations, anyway. Any other questions?
Get people from the communities around, like Summers.
Yes, yes. As a matter of fact, our Scott County one, Jennifer David and Trish Whitcomb led that. And Jennifer is very much involved in kind of like the social services there. So she had several local social services tabling and even speaking about what they were doing in the community. Hers was much more modeled around a traditional town hall. And that's the other thing. Every candidate that is hosting their summit, they design it based off of where they're going to be located, the people that are showing up. And so it really is a matter of it reflecting the community. Oh, yes.
Well, how many people actually say, if you're not against abortion, I don't want to talk to you about anything.
I will say Morgan County. Yes, okay. How many people say that if you're not against abortion, I don't want to hear anything that you have to say? And I will say that for some communities, like in Morgan County, I've been in spaces where there was very much this wall. However, and if you get my Mondays with Michelle newsletter, this morning's was kind of talking about this. When I went to the State House, one of the bills that we were trying to get passed was a robust pregnant worker accommodations bill. And Peggy Mayfield voted against that. The bill that did get passed supposedly to help pregnant workers was pretty much, you can't get fired. They don't have to do anything, but you can't get fired. And so what we saw was lip service to really caring about babies. Because if they cared, then we would have the clean air, the clean water, we'd have the education, we'd have the infrastructure that we need. And I think when I end up talking to people that can allow themselves to get out of the groupthink, they're willing to hear that. And then there's an honesty that happens, and then we can have a deeper conversation. But I'm not going to lie, it can be that barrier because it has been my entire lifetime used as the single wedge issue. So. I think that's it. Let me give you a couple of websites. My website is voteformichellehiggs.com. I've got information back there. I would love for your support. If you don't live in my district, I'm going to tell you right now, I need you to support Thomas. If you are in 62, friggin' support Thomas. We're doing everything to get him elected, okay? He is the most flippable seat right now. And again, part of the summit was how do we put more emphasis to get him in? If the rest of us come in on a blue wave, I'm celebrating that too. If you're in my district or you know anybody in my district, please see me after. And then again, Rural Summit, IndianaRuralSummit.org. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Michelle. And thank you in particular for trying to break the vicious cycle